The October rain hammered against the windows of Hendricks and Associates Law Office in downtown Portland, Oregon. I sat in the leather chair, still wearing the black suit from Dad's funeral 3 days ago. The smell of old books and polished wood filled the conference room, but all I could think about was how Dad would never again call me kiddo. "Thank you all for coming," said Margaret Hendricks, Dad's longtime attorney. Her silver hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her kind eyes showed genuine sympathy. "No, this is a difficult time for everyone." I glanced around the mahogany table. Besides me, there was my stepmother, Victoria, her perfectly manicured nails drumming impatiently. On the table, she'd married Dad 5 years ago when I was 23. Her blonde hair was styled expensively, and her designer black dress probably cost more than most people's rent. Next to her sat her daughter Madison, 2 years younger than me, scrolling through her phone. "Before we begin," Mrs. Hendricks continued, "I want to express my condolences. Robert was not just a client, but a friend. His construction company built half the houses in Beaverton." Victoria shifted in her seat, her wedding ring catching the fluorescent light. "Can we please get on with this?" 3. The coldness in her voice made my stomach turn. Dad had been dead for less than a week, and she was worried about her spa appointment. Of course, the attorney replied curtly. She opened a thick folder and pulled out several documents. "Robert's will is quite straightforward. He updated it 18 months ago, and I witnessed the signing myself." My heart pounded. Dad and I had grown distant after he married Victoria, mainly because she'd made it clear I wasn't welcome in their new life. But he was still my father. He's the man who taught me to swing a hammer. Mrs. Hendricks cleared her throat and began reading. "To my beloved wife, Victoria, I leave our family home at 847 Maple Street, Beaverton, Oregon, along with all its contents and furnishings." Victoria smiled smugly. Madison looked up from her phone long enough to smirk in my direction. "To my stepdaughter, Madison, I leave the sum of $50,000 to be used for her education or future endeavors." Madison's eyes widened. "Oh my God, seriously, that's amazing." I felt my throat tighten. Dad had always been generous, but hearing him provide for Victoria's daughter while I sat there empty-handed stung. Mrs. Hendricks continued, "To my son, Michael, I leave my construction business, Miller Construction LLC, including all equipment, contracts, and business assets." Relief flooded through me. The business meant everything to me. Even if I'd been working as a project manager for a competitor since college, but Victoria's face had turned red. "Wait, what about the bank accounts? What about Robert's investments? His retirement fund?" Hendricks looked uncomfortable. "I'm afraid those accounts were nearly depleted over the past 2 years. The medical bills from Robert's cancer treatment, combined with some unfortunate investment losses, have left the estate with minimal liquid assets." "That's impossible." Victoria slammed her hand on the table. "Robert was wealthy. He had hundreds of thousands in savings." "I'm sorry, Victoria, but the financial records show otherwise." I watched Victoria's face go through several emotions: shock, anger, then calculation. "This is ridiculous. I was his wife. I deserve everything. That construction company should be mine." "The will is very clear," Mrs. Hendricks said firmly. "Michael inherits Miller Construction." Victoria stood up abruptly. "I'm going to contest this. Robert wasn't in his right mind when he signed that will. Cancer medication made him confused." "Victoria, I can assure you that Robert was completely lucid when he updated his will." "I don't care." Victoria's voice rose. "I won't let some ungrateful brat take what's rightfully mine. Michael never even visited his father during his illness." That hit me like a punch to the gut. It was true I hadn't visited much during Dad's final months. Victoria had made it clear I wasn't welcome, and stupidly I'd let that keep me away. "That's enough," I said quietly, standing up. "I didn't know Dad was that sick. No one told me?" "Oh, please," Victoria spat. "Don't act like the victim here. You were too busy with your own life to care about your father." "I tried to visit," I said. "But every time I called, you said he was resting or too tired for visitors. You made it clear I wasn't welcome." "That's a lie," Mrs. Hendricks intervened. "I think we should all take a moment to process this information. The will is valid and legally binding. Victoria, you're certainly free to contest it, but but I should warn you that it will be expensive and unlikely to succeed. Victoria grabbed her purse. Come on, Madison. We're leaving. As they headed for the door, Victoria turned back with venom in her eyes. This isn't over, Michael. I'm going to fight this with everything I have. After they left, the room felt heavy. Mrs. Hendricks looked at me with sympathy. I'm sorry about that display. She right? I asked. Was Dad really broke? Mrs. Hendricks sighed. The cancer treatment was expensive, and Robert made some investments that didn't pan out. But Michael, there's something else. Your father left specific instructions about something he wanted you to have, but only after the official will reading. She walked to a wall safe hidden behind a framed diploma. He gave me this envelope to give to you personally. Said it was the most important thing he could leave you. My hands trembled as I took the sealed envelope. My name was written on it in Dad's familiar handwriting. Take your time, Mrs. Hendricks said softly. I'll be in my office if you need anything. Alone in the conference room, I opened the envelope.
Inside was a handwritten letter and a small brass key.
Michael, the letter began. If you're reading this, then I'm gone. No, Victoria kept us apart these past few years, and I was too stubborn and too sick to fight her on it. But you need to know that I never stopped loving you. Tears blurred my vision, but I kept reading. The construction business is yours, son, but it's not the real gift I'm leaving you. In my home office, behind the bookshelf, there's a hidden panel. This key opens a safe behind it. Inside, you'll find the truth about why your stepmother was so eager to keep you away from me. She doesn't know about this safe, and she can't know. The letter continued, I've made some mistakes, Michael, but I've also made some preparations. The safe contains documents that will protect you and expose the truth about what's been happening. I should have been stronger, should have stood up to Victoria sooner, but I was sick and tired, and I let her manipulate me. Don't let her win. My hands shook as I read the final lines. I'm proud of you, kiddo. I always have been. Take care of yourself, and remember that sometimes the people closest to us are the ones we need to watch the most carefully. I love you, Dad. I sat there for a long time, staring at the brass key. Whatever was in that safe, Dad had gone to great lengths to keep it hidden from Victoria. Mrs. Hendricks knocked on the door. Michael, are you all right? Mrs. Hendricks, I said, standing up. I need to get into Dad's house tonight. She nodded. Knowingly, I thought you might. I have the keys to the house until the estate is settled. But be careful, Michael. Victoria's unpredictable. As I walked out into the Portland drizzle, I felt the brass key in my pocket. Dad had left me more than a construction business he'd left me a mystery that could change everything. The drive to Dad's house in Beaverton took me through familiar neighborhoods where Miller Construction had built dozens of homes. Each one reminded me of weekend trips with Dad when I was a kid. Watching him inspect job sites, Dad's house sat on a quiet street lined with maple trees. The two-story colonial looked exactly as I remembered: white siding, black shutters, and the wraparound porch where Dad used to sit with his morning coffee. But now it felt different, tainted by Victoria's presence. I parked in the driveway and sat for a moment, gathering courage. The house was dark, except for a single lamp in the living room window. Using Mrs. Hendricks' key, let myself in through the front door. The house smelled like Victoria's expensive perfume mixed with the lingering scent of Dad's cigars. Redecorated, gone were Dad's comfortable recliners and his collection of vintage beer signs. Everything was white and beige, sterile and cold. I made my way to Dad's office. My phone's flashlight cut through the darkness as I searched for the bookshelf Dad had mentioned. There it was, against the far wall, a built-in bookshelf filled with Dad's collection of construction manuals and business books. I ran my hands along the edges, looking for any sign of a hidden panel. Behind a row of books about concrete and framing, my fingers found what felt like a small lever. I pressed it, and a section of the wall swung inward with a soft click. Behind it was a small wall safe. My heart pounded as I inserted the brass key. The safe opened with a quiet mechanical sound, and inside I found a thick manila envelope, small digital camera, and several USB drives. There was also a handwritten note on top. Start with the photos, then the documents. I pulled out the photos first, and my blood ran cold. They showed Victoria in what looked like a restaurant, but she wasn't alone. She was sitting across from a man I didn't recognize, dark-haired, maybe in his 40s. They were holding hands across the table, and in one photo, they were kissing. The timestamps showed they were taken over the past 2 years, throughout Dad's illness. While she'd been playing the devoted wife, she'd been having an affair. But that wasn't the worst part. The manila envelope contained bank statements, legal documents, and correspondence between Victoria and several financial institutions. As I read through them, the scope of her deception became clear. Victoria had been systematically draining Dad's accounts. She'd convinced him to make her a co-signer on his business accounts, claiming it would help her manage household expenses while he was sick. Instead, she'd been transferring money to accounts in her name and her lover's name. The documents showed a pattern of financial abuse that had been going on for 3 years. Victoria had convinced Dad to make several investments that had actually been ways to move money into accounts she controlled. One document made my hand shake with rage. It was a life insurance policy change form, dated just 6 months ago. Dad had originally named me as the beneficiary of his $500,000 life insurance policy, but the form showed he'd changed it to Victoria. Except the signature looked different from Dad's usual writing, shaky, in a way that suggested forgery. I photographed everything with my phone, then carefully returned the documents to the safe. This was evidence of massive financial fraud. As I was closing the safe, I heard a car door slam outside. My heart stopped. Through the office window, I could see Victoria's white BMW in the driveway. She was back. I quickly shut the hidden panel and moved the books back into place. The front door opened, and I could hear Victoria's heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She was talking to someone on her phone. "I don't care what it costs," she was saying. "I want that will contested immediately." I crept toward the office door, trying to figure out how to get out without being seen. "David, I need you to be patient," Victoria continued. "Once I get control of the estate, we can be together openly. The life insurance money will be enough for us to start fresh somewhere else."
David, that must be the man in the photos.
And her casual mention of the life insurance confirmed my suspicions about the forged documents. I eased the office door open and peered into the hallway. Victoria was in the living room, pacing back and forth while talking on her phone. But as I stepped into the hallway, a floorboard creaked under my foot. Victoria went silent. "I'll call you back," she said, and I heard her footsteps heading toward the hallway. "Michael?" Victoria's voice was closer now. "Is that you?" I stepped into the hallway, trying to look casual. "Hey, Victoria. I was just picking up some of Dad's things." She appeared at the end of the hallway, her eyes suspicious and cold. "What are you doing here? You can't just break into my house." "It's not breaking in when I have a key," I said. "And technically, it's still part of Dad's estate until probate is complete." Victoria's face flushed red. "Get out, right now." "Have every right. I'm Dad's son, and I'm the executor of his business estate." "There's nothing in there that concerns you," Victoria said, moving closer. "I'm sure you're right," I said, backing toward the front door. "I'll just come back tomorrow." "With Mrs. Hendricks?" The mention of the attorney made Victoria's eyes narrow. "You're not bringing lawyers into my house?" Victoria's calm facade cracked. "You little bastard. You think you can just waltz in here and take what's mine?" "I was married to your father. I took care of him when he was sick. Where were you?" "You made sure I wasn't here," I said, anger rising in my voice. "You kept me away from my own father. Your father was weak. He let you walk all over him your whole life. But I wasn't going to let you manipulate him when he was vulnerable. The only one manipulating him was you." The words slipped out before I could stop them. Victoria's eyes went wide, then narrowed dangerously. "What did you say?" I realized I'd made a mistake. I'd tipped my hand without meaning to, but there was no taking it back now. I said the only one manipulating him was you. "Dad was a smart man, Victoria. He saw through your act." Victoria's face went pale, then red.
"What you're
talking about, don't I? I know Dad updated his will 18 months ago. I know he made provisions you don't know about. It was a bluff, but it hit its mark." Victoria's eyes showed a flash of fear before the anger returned. "Get out," she said, her voice deadly quiet. Get out of my house right now or I'm calling the police. Fine, I said, heading for the door. But this isn't over, Victoria. As I reached the front door, Victoria called out, Michael. I turned back. She was standing in the hallway, her face a mask of cold fury. If you try to cause trouble for me, you'll regret it. I have resources you don't know about, and I'm not afraid to use them. I left the house and sat in my car for a moment, my hand shaking. Victoria's reaction had confirmed everything I'd found in the safe. She was guilty, and she knew that Dad had been onto her. I barely slept that night. Victoria's threat kept echoing in my mind, along with the evidence I'd found in Dad's safe. By morning, I'd made a decision. I was going to take everything to the police. But first, I needed to get the original documents from the safe. I called Mrs. Hendricks at 8 a.m. Michael, how are you holding up? She asked. I found what Dad wanted me to find, I said. And it's worse than I thought. I need to go back to the house today to get the original documents. There was a pause. Are you sure that's wise? Victoria called me last night, furious about you being in the house. She's threatening to get a restraining order. She can't do that. I'm the executor of Dad's business estate. That's true, but Michael, be careful. Victoria sounded unstable. Maybe I should come with you. It might be a good idea. Can you meet me there at noon? Of course. And Michael, it's whatever you found. We need to handle it properly. I spent the morning researching financial fraud laws in Oregon. The evidence was damning. Victoria had stolen at least $300,000 from Dad's accounts over 2 years. At 11:30, I drove back to Beaverton. I parked down the street from Dad's house and waited for Mrs. Hendricks to arrive. She pulled up in her silver Lexus at exactly noon. But as she got out of her car, I noticed a white BMW parked across the street. Victoria was watching us. Here, I told Mrs. Hendricks. I see her. Let's just get this over with quickly. We walked to the front door together. I used the key, but as soon as we stepped inside, Victoria appeared from the living room. She was dressed in jeans and a sweater, but her hair was perfect and her makeup was flawless. Margaret, she said coldly, I didn't expect to see you here. Victoria, Mrs. Hendricks replied. Michael has a legal right to access Robert's business documents. I don't think so. Victoria crossed her arms. I've decided to contest the will. Until that's resolved, nothing leaves this house. Can't prevent the executor from accessing business documents, Mrs. Hendricks said firmly. I'd had enough. Victoria, we both know why you don't want me in Dad's office. Her eyes flashed dangerously. I'm not afraid of anything. Really? Victoria, I know about David. The blood drained from Victoria's face. I don't know what you're talking about. David Richardson, your boyfriend. The one you've been seeing for the past 2 years while Dad was dying? Victoria's composure cracked. You're insane. I have photos, Victoria. Photos of you together at restaurants, holding hands, kissing. Mrs. Hendricks looked shocked. Michael, what are you talking about? I pulled out my phone and showed her one of the photos. Dad documented everything. Victoria lunged for my phone, but I pulled it away. Give me that? I don't think so. I also have copies of bank statements showing how you've been stealing from Dad's accounts. $300,000, Victoria? That's grand theft. You're lying. But Victoria's voice was shaking now. Should we call the police and let them decide? No. I'm sure they'd love to see the forged signature on Dad's life insurance policy. Victoria went completely still. You can't prove anything, can't I? Dad was smarter than you gave him credit for. He documented everything, every stolen dollar, every forged document. Mrs. Hendricks was staring at Victoria with disgust. Victoria, please tell me this isn't true. It's all lies, Victoria said, but her voice lacked conviction. Robert was sick. He was paranoid and confused. He imagined David Richardson. He imagined you transferring money to accounts in David's name? Victoria's face went red. You little bastard. Then enlighten me. Victoria looked at Mrs. Hendricks, then back at me. I could see her weighing her options. Your father was a weak man, she said finally. He let his guilt about your mother's death make him a pushover. By stealing from him? By managing his finances better than he could. Robert was making terrible investment decisions. So you decided to steal it first? I decided to protect it. Oh, David is a financial advisor who's helping me move Robert's money into better investments. Investments in accounts you controlled? Victoria's jaw tightened. I was protecting my future. Robert was dying, and he was going to leave everything to Eutha's son, who couldn't even be bothered to visit him. I tried to visit. You kept me away, because you would have interfered. You would have filled his head with nonsense about me. Mrs. Hendricks looked sick. Victoria, you're describing financial abuse. Elder abuse. These are serious crimes. I didn't abuse anyone. I took care of Robert. Victoria's composure finally snapped completely. Fine. Yes, I moved some money around. Yes, I made some financial decisions Robert wasn't capable of making. But I deserved that money. I gave up 5 years of my life to take care of a sick old man. You gave up 5 years to systematically rob him blind. I earned every penny. Do you know what it's like living with someone who's dying? Do you know what it's like pretending to love someone when all you want is for it to be over? The cruelty in her voice was breathtaking. Mrs. Hendricks actually gasped. You're a monster, I said quietly. I'm a survivor. And I'm not going to let you destroy everything I've worked for. It's too late for that. I'm taking this evidence to the police. Victoria's eyes went wild. You can't. I won't let you. Ran toward the stairs. I realized she was heading for something. Mrs. Hendricks and I followed her up to the master bedroom, where she was frantically opening a bedside table drawer. Victoria, what are you doing? Mrs. Hendricks asked. Victoria pulled out a small pistola, .38. Revolver that had probably belonged to Dad. Her hands were shaking as she pointed it at us. I'm protecting myself, she said. I won't go to prison. Victoria. Put the gun down, Mrs. Hendricks said calmly. This won't solve anything. It'll solve everything. Michael dies in a tragic accident, and there's no one left to contest the will. You're talking about murder, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm talking about survival. The evidence is already copied, I lied. Killing me won't change anything. We'll see about that. Victoria's finger moved toward the trigger, but she'd forgotten about Mrs. Hendricks. The elderly attorney grabbed a heavy crystal vase from the dresser and brought it down on Victoria's wrist. The gun went off, the bullet shattering the bedroom window, and Victoria screamed as she dropped the weapon. I grabbed the gun while Mrs. Hendricks restrained Victoria, who was crying and holding her wrist. It's over, I said. It's all over.
What?
Months later, I stood in the rebuilt offices of Miller Construction, watching the sunrise paint the Portland skyline. Victoria had been sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for elder abuse, financial fraud, and assault with a deadly weapon. Her boyfriend, David Richardson, received 5 years as an accomplice. Michael, the crew is ready to start the Henderson project, said Carmen Rodriguez, my office manager and Dad's former bookkeeper. She'd returned to help me rebuild the company. Great. Any word on the community center contract? We got it. City Council was impressed with our proposal, I smiled. Dad would have been proud. We were building something that would last, something that would help families and strengthen communities. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Lunch at 1. Jessica had stuck by me through everything's illegal battles, the financial struggles, the emotional upheaval.
Oh.
She'd helped me see that. Victoria's manipulation hadn't just hurt Dad. It had hurt our entire family, Mr. Miller. Carmen's voice interrupted my thoughts. There's someone here to see you. I looked up to see Madison standing in the doorway, looking nervous but determined. She'd grown up a lot in the past 6 months, working part-time while attending Portland Community College. Hi, Michael. Do you have a minute?
Of course.
Come in. Madison sat across from my desk. I wanted to thank you again for not contesting my inheritance. I know you could have. Dad wanted you to have that money for college. I wasn't going to change his wishes. I also wanted to apologize. I knew something was wrong with Mom's behavior, especially the way she kept you away from your father. I should have said something. You were just a kid, Madison. You can't blame yourself for your mother's choices. I've been seeing a counselor at school. She says I need to process my feelings about having a criminal for a mother. That's smart. And Madison. If you ever need anything help with school, job references, whatever you can call me, we're still family. Tears welled up in her eyes. Thank you. That means everything to me. After Madison left, I walked to the window and looked out at the city Dad had helped build. Construction cranes dotted the skyline, and I could see several projects where Miller Construction had contributed to the community's growth. Mrs. Hendricks stopped by later. That afternoon, with the final paperwork from the estate settlement, Victoria's house had been sold to pay back the money she'd stolen. The remaining funds had been donated to a cancer research foundation in Dad's name. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "Better. Some days are harder than others, but I'm learning to focus on the future instead of dwelling on what Victoria took from us. Your father would be proud of what you've accomplished here. Miller Construction is stronger than ever." "I hope so. I want to build something that will last, something that honors his memory." Mrs. Hendricks smiled. "You already have, Michael. You've built something more important than a business. You've built a legacy of integrity and justice." That evening, Jessica and I walked through Laurelhurst Park, enjoying the warm spring air. She'd been patient with me throughout the legal proceedings. "Are you ready to talk about our future?" she asked, taking my hand. "I think I am. Business is stable, Victoria's behind bars, and I'm starting to feel like myself again." "Good, because I have something to tell you." She stopped, walking, and turned to face me. "I got the job offer in Seattle, but I turned it down." "Why?" "I thought you wanted that position." "I did, but I realized I want something more. I want to be here with you, building something together. I want to help Miller Construction expand into sustainable housing projects." I stared at her. "You want to join the company? If you'll have me?" "I have ideas about green building initiatives and community development programs." I kissed her then, right there in the park. Dad would have loved that idea. He always said construction was about building homes for families. "So is that a yes?" "It's a yes to everything. It's a job, the future, all of it." As we walked back to Ward, my apartment, I thought about Dad's letter and his final words of wisdom. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones we need to watch most carefully. Victoria had been right there in his house, pretending to love him while systematically destroying everything he'd worked for. But Dad had been watching too. He'd documented her crimes, protected his legacy, and left me the tools I needed to bring her to justice. In the end, his final gift wasn't just a business or evidence of Victoria's crimes. It was the knowledge that family means fighting for what's right. Even when it's difficult. The brass key was still in my desk drawer at the office, a reminder of everything we'd overcome. Victoria had underestimated both Dad and me, thinking we were too naive or too trusting to see through her manipulation. She was wrong. Miller Construction was thriving again, building homes and commercial projects throughout the Portland area. We'd hired back several of Dad's old employees and taken on apprentices from the local community college. It was exactly what Dad would have wanted, a business that gave back to the community. As Jessica and I made plans for our future together, I realized that Dad's greatest gift hadn't been the business or the evidence that brought Victoria to justice. It had been teaching me that sometimes the hardest battles are worth fighting, and that integrity and hard work always triumph over greed and deception in the end. The truth had set us all free, and now we could finally build something that would last.